Joining us now, it's a pleasure to have on Fox News contributor and member of the Wall Street Journal editorial board and author, Kimberley Strassel. Kimberley is a must-read. She's a great writer. Kimberley, what do you make of Pelosi getting this primetime TV special for the January 6 hearings?
I think it's very revealing. You know, I'm one of those who felt all the way back last year that America could really benefit from having a thorough January 6 investigation that was fair. I would love to hear more, for instance, about how much did the FBI know about some of the more militant elements that showed up that day before the day? What were some of the failures of the Capitol Police? But instead, we've had this committee that has been almost obsessively focused instead on a lot of the things we already knew about failings within the White House, this intent, it would seem, to present all of this as a conspiracy, a planned conspiracy and an insurrection. And you add to that now the primetime element of this. I mean, congressional hearings are meant to inform, not to be theater. And it really does give heft to some Republican arguments that this isn't really about fact-finding. This is about a midterm campaign by Democrats.
Yeah, to rescue their bad narrative, what their positions are in the economy and more. You know, Kimberley, to your point, polls and even like 538 are saying that Americans have already moved on from January 6. And the House GOP, they're asking, where are the primetime hearings on inflation, the border crime? I like your reaction to what Senators McConnell and Kennedy say. Watch this.
A real dilemma, and I think all of that is a result of the $2 trillion the other guys dumped on the economy last week against the advice of Larry Summers, Jason Furman, and now the Secretary of the Treasury has basically admitted they made a mistake. That's hard to find in this town, so I commend her for admitting they made a mistake, but it was a gargantuan mistake.
Today, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, who was also captain of Team Transitory Inflation, announced that she's really sorry, but inflation's not going to be transitory. It's going to be with us for a long while. In other words, she does not have a solution to inflation, but she really admires the problem. In other words, get used to it.
So, Kimberley, what do you think of that? I mean, the GOP is saying, where are the hearings on that, on a prime time?
Yeah, I have made the case that some of these Republican candidates who've been out in some of these recent primaries, who've been making their races all about what happened in the last election, that they are missing the boat because voters want them to look forward. And the exact same thing is even more so the question here, because Democrats are in control, okay? And there's polls out there saying people have moved on. They don't really want to be told yet again what, by the way, most other law enforcement agencies already told us about what happened on that day. They want politicians that are going to address the here and the now. And what they're getting from this White House is not any of that. It's a lot of blame casting, a lot of nonsense about how they intend to do something, but people know that it's not real. Democrats still would have an opportunity to maybe make some real concrete steps if they took some better policy decisions. Instead of doing that, they're just trying to say, look over here, look at this shiny thing, let us continue to talk about Trump. I don't think that is resonating nearly as much as they might hope so.
Kimberley, to your point, the New York Times also reported that Democrats are trying to use the primetime hearings to change the narrative away from what's going on in the economy. And there's also that there's pressure being brought to bear by Democrats onto Attorney General Merrick Garland to do more indictments of Trump team members beyond Peter Navarro. What do you think of that?
So these are the same Democrats that love to complain about the politicization of the Department of Justice. Look, Attorney General Bill Barr came in and did a pretty good job of trying to correct the course of that institution after it was utterly disgraced over its investigation into the Trump campaign, playing around with politics and elections when it has no job doing that. And it's as if Merrick Garland just threw all that out the window. I think that there are some really legitimate questions about even the indictments that they have brought, given that there have been so obviously a partisan motivation behind congressional referrals of those to the Department of Justice. And now you have politicians actively engaging them to do more. This is still an institution that has yet to regain the trust of the public, and these kind of indictments are certainly not helping it.
Kimberley, what do you think the ratings are going to be for this primetime TV special on the January 6 hearings? What do you think about the ratings?
Well, I will tell you that the media is doing their very best to advertise for it. The number of stories on this have been quite astonishing, and I guess we'll see. But again, I think a lot of people, they feel as though they've got the broad contours of what happened that day. I think there's a lot of people that are also actively going to tune it out because they're kind of concerned about some of the tactics that the committee itself is engaged in, some of the institutional norm busting that it's engaged in, subpoenaing colleagues, etc. So I'm not sure. This could be another Mueller repeat.
Interesting. Kimberley Strassel, so smart, great writer. Must read. Kimberley Strassel, come back soon. We love having you on.